All right, what's up, football fans? Welcome to a Thursday episode of the Call Sheet Daily. I'm your host, Kevin Smith. Got a great guest on the program today. We're going to talk about scouting in the NFL, scouting college prospects. How does that work? Why is that really some of the unsung hero work that goes on behind the scenes in professional football? And to talk about all that with me, my guest today is Rodrik David, who was a longtime scout in the NFL, and he's going to take us through this process. So, Rodrik, welcome to the show.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. Love talking ball. So let's get into it.
Yeah. So you were on Jeff Hartman's Let's Ride program on Monday. I caught that. That was really interesting. I don't want to be redundant here, but for those who didn't catch that show, real quick, take us through your background. How did you get into the league, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. The short of it, again, I grew up around football. Dad was a high school coach for 30 plus years. Football is what I know and what I love. It's what I wanted to do. I went and played. I was a slow, stiff white corner at Nebraska Wesleyan University that realized that sitting behind the camera, not being on the field, was going to be my path in the future. And through that time, I realized I liked the scouting, the getting into the details of specific players more than I liked the scheme aspect of it. And I was like, hey, that's probably scouting as opposed to coaching. So I applied to some graduate schools, ended up at The Ohio State University, did some time there, ended up working with the defensive line coach, Mike Vrabel, which obviously the head coach of the New England Patriots now. So I got a crash course in defensive line work and got to see how a Division I program works. From there, I spent the 2013 season with the Tennessee Titans as kind of a seasonal intern, primarily did pro-focused work, kind of set the table for some of the off-season stuff there. Spent 2 years coaching at Case Western Reserve University up in Cleveland, Ohio after that. But relationships and connections I had made both at Ohio State and in Tennessee led to an opportunity where I became a full-time scouting assistant with the Atlanta Falcons in February 2016 and spent about we'll call it a year as a scouting assistant. I was really doing pro scouting work by the end of that 2016 season as we were preparing for the playoffs, advanced scouts, getting everything ready to go for that Super Bowl run, and then spent 2 years as a pro scout. And then a couple years as a Midwest area scout before some COVID vaccine things ended my career in the NFL to where now I'm still consulting. I still do a lot of football work with agents all over the NFL, help with draft prep, and do whatever I can on the football side.
Interesting. And now you're doing a podcast here on FFSN called Scouting the League. How's that going so far? Has that been a good experience?
Yeah. The media side of it, the podcast side of it is, it's something that I have grown to love. We'll call it that. Again, scouts, for the most part, you're behind the scenes. You don't want to be out in front of the camera. It's an uncomfortable spot. Neil Stratton, my co-host, he runs a service called Inside the League, which is fantastic. He was kind of the one that spurred me on. I've done it. There's been a couple iterations of it was called the Scouting Report for a while. Now it's called Scouting the League. We really get into the behind the scenes, the nitty gritty. We had an episode a couple weeks ago that was only about local days and top 30 visits. If that's something that interests you, again, I was a part of it intimately on both sides for multiple years. Again, we've got our episode that's going to drop Wednesday of this week, talking to a GM, Eddie Hernan of the Yukon Huskies. We've got Guys Crowley, the GM of the Arizona football program, Arizona Wildcats, on next week. We really get in behind the scenes, get into the deep stuff that, again, maybe the average fan isn't going to be as interested in, but is essential to the game of football. So it's the nitty gritty that I love.
That's great. I still can't get used to hearing the general manager of a college program. That's still a new reality, obviously.
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about it. Before we're gonna focus more on advanced scouting. I think that's really interesting. But before we jump into that, what makes a good scout? To be good in that profession, what do you have to be good at specifically?
Yeah. Again, there's a lot of ways you can be a good scout, and what your strengths are is probably going to lend itself to what area you really end up being comfortable in. That the number one thing that, I would say a scout has to be able to ask and think of every question possible, because that is what you're doing. You are digging, you are asking scenario questions, personality questions, play questions, situational questions, and the process from when a scout gets a player's profile at any given time of the year is just to try to answer every question on that prospect, on the field and off the field. And the good ones do a really good job of that: source development, getting the right answers, reading between the lines, again, listening to answers, and find, a school doesn't ever want to dunk on their kids, for the most part, but you have to, again, the way they answer a question, even if they're saying the same thing, is really important to listen to. So that's a huge part of it, is, again, you're just constantly asking questions and then following up. Obviously, there's more natural evaluators, people that, hey, they are just very good. They really see the details of movement, of the way a player is going to win, their strengths, their weaknesses. Again, that can be taught to a certain degree. There's certainly people, just like anything, it comes more naturally to them, and that's always going to be the case for some of these. You hear like this guy's a great evaluator. Again, they're going to probably lend themselves to be in that world. And then at the end of the day, scouting is a huge relationship business, as so many of them are. Again, you've got to be a good person, be a good dude, treat people the right way. If you're in a building, if you're in your own building, you got to treat people the right way, do the right things, have that good relationship. It's a lot about who you know, and so you've got to certainly follow those steps to make sure you're in the right there.
Interesting. Sounds a little bit like you have to be part football analyst, part psychologist when you're trying to evaluate prospects.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, and it is digging into them, because you've got prospects. Again, I was in the Midwest, as well as on the pro side, and again, you get a certain kind of guys, but you get kids from all over the country, different backgrounds, and again, you never want to assume anything based on X, Y, or Z. You've got to figure it out for every prospect, which takes a little bit of time.
So if we get into the idea of advanced scouting, and we're talking on the pro side here, talk us through that. What exactly are we talking about? What are your main responsibilities? What information are you providing the team about opponents, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was a pro scout with the Falcons, we had a couple different setups. My first year, I was part of a kind of a 3-ish man team. I ended up doing about, I think, 6 advances that year. The second year, it was just me and our pro director. So I had half the advances. And the big things you were writing all 53. You were evaluating all 53 on their roster, plus probably I think at the time for us, it was 10 or 12 practice squad players, up to 16 now. So again, you want to have an idea of those practice squad players. That's where your free agency reports are going to really generate from originally. So you're going to have an idea of all 53, full depth chart. Again, who's playing in what personnel groupings. Injuries are one of the huge things that you're going to be staying up to date on, because that is where a coach, when you start handing that advance to the coaches on Monday of game week, they're like, all right, who's hurt, who's going to be playing this week, who's not going to be playing, who's maybe going to be a little bit limited, because that's going to help set their plan. And then after that, again, everything's going to be a little bit different. It was different year 1 to year 2 for me. You're working a lot with your analytics department, and in today's day and age, using resources like Pro Football Focus and all the different data resources to try to give you your probabilities. And that's one of the big things that it came down to for advanced scouts in Atlanta was, hey, if this combination of 11 players is on the field on offense, it's 84% pass. And again, when you get up north for Coach Quinn and the coaching staff that I was with, if you were north of 75% probability, that was going to help them make a certain call and feel confident about it. And again, when you get up, there were certain groupings, groupings with formations that you start looking at. It's like, man, this is 97% pass, and it's, typically 15 yards down the field. These are their shots. So again, you lay all of that out in an advanced scouting report. As an advanced scout, I've run those reports. I've looked at the plays to see if there's, again, anything that a Mike linebacker, a strong safety, Keanu Neal, a pass rusher can tip on hey, this is the play call. We're getting something from the sideline. It's like, hey, I know this is coming. I can play, instead of having to play the 5 or 6 plays that maybe would come with this, I can narrow it down to these 2 plays, which allows me to play faster. And that is a lot of what we really tried to do, was if you can eliminate, the 5 things you have to look at, and you're looking at 2 things, you can play that much faster. And so that was really what we focused a lot of time. There was some scheme stuff. Again, just overview. Hey, this is really a big outside zone team, inside zone team, counter team, drop back. This is, again, we had opponents we called more finesse teams. We had power punching in the face teams. And then again, talking about, again, through, really about week 5 or 6 to week, 15, 16, 17, where is a team at? I remember that was a case in different advances I did where, again, a team was trending a certain direction, or something was happening with the coaching staff, or something was happening with the player, where you have to try to paint that picture for them, just, so they are aware. Again, a coach is they are 100% all in on that week's opponent, and then they have to wipe and quickly get caught up to speed on the next opponent. And that's where you as an advanced scout come in. Usually it was for us Monday at about 5 or 6 o'clock at night. We were sitting down for that advanced scouting meeting with the coaching staff, offense, defense, and then special teams, and then just diving in and being ready, again, kind of like the college scouting, be able to answer whatever questions about that team that they had.
Interesting. Now, how specific did you get regarding your scouting of opposing players? Like, was it, hey man, this is a big 3-tech defensive tackle, he's got a great bull rush, but there's no counter move, so we have to anchor in our pass pro, et cetera? Or, this wide receiver is going to tip his hat because when he's getting the ball, man, his get off is fantastic, but when he's not, he's straight up and down in his stance, and he's not releasing off the ball with any urgency, et cetera. Is that the type of stuff you were doing?
Yeah, again, you're right. And probably a run note, a pass note. Again, how these players, again, there's whether it's offensive linemen, wide receivers, tight ends, where you're going to have a little run game summary. This player's a blocking tight end that can't run and catch routes. Again, it's going to be pretty obvious in their kind of one-liner, in their run pass summary, where you're going to be talking about that. Same thing, wide receivers, offensive linemen. The well-known players, again, you don't have to do a ton on those. If you're playing Raekwon Williams, or you're playing Fletcher Cox, Aaron Donald, like, again, this is Aaron Donald, the report's done. Again, you're going to have your hands full that day. It really comes down to some of those role and package players where you really wanted to be on your P's and Q's, not that you're not putting a report on Aaron Donald. But again, the coaching staff's they know what Aaron Donald is. I think everybody sitting at home knows what Aaron Donald is, but who's his backup? Who is playing alongside him? Because again, we have a plan for Aaron Donald, and it is, send 3 guys his way. But when you're talking about maybe the 2-eye or the nose or whoever's playing opposite side of him, it's like you're going to have to win some one-on-ones against that player. So knowing, hey, this is his number 1 move, this is his go-to, this is the way he likes to approach his pass rush, that is where you really want to get into it, because those are the players that are, defensive linemen, corners, nickels, safeties, where you can really do stuff to expose their weaknesses, try to get him in some of those spots where, again, from a scouting standpoint, we said this player is not as strong in this area. So that's where our coaching staff can really try to exploit it.
I've heard people talk about the NFL as a matchup league, because the talent disparity between teams is generally not that great. It's not like, hey, this is the Big Ten and Ohio State is playing Northwestern and they're just so much more talented that we're going to win one-on-ones, et cetera. But that in the NFL, you really have to find the ability to get your best guys matched up against their weakest guys. That sounds like a thing that the scouting department would be really important for, to be able to help the coaching staff in the limited time that the coaching staff really has to identify those matchups. Is that a thing that you feel was crucial to your role?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, when you have players, again, for us, it was Julio Jones for a long time. You want to find ways to get Julio Jones the ball in different spots. And again, a great thing about Julio is you could move him around. So as we were getting into scouting reports for a defensive side of the ball, you're probably going to look at, hey, is this team a are their corners staying at home? Are they a left and right corner team? Are they going to match a corner wherever Julio is? It's going to be Xavier Rhodes for the Minnesota Vikings was one. He was going to travel with Julio. If we motion him, how are they going to match that? And what's it going to open up for Julio? But also, what problems is that going to commit for, again, their nickel who's trying to cover Mohamed Sanu or Marvin Hall, our burner, or Aldrick Robinson, or some of those guys. And so you look at what has this team done this season against other big time opponents. And again, you try to make your prediction. What has this team done in previous years? What is this coordinator? Again, that's one of the things you do as an advanced scout is look back on the history of some of these defensive coaches, defensive coordinators, and be like, this coach really, he does not like traveling corners. He does not want to move his corner across the field. So if that's the case, we need to, in the first 5 or 6 plays of the game, we're going to line up number 11 in 4 different spots and see if he's going to stay true. We're going to get some answers early in the game that's going to help set it up in the second, third, and fourth quarter. And that was one of the things with both Kyle Shanahan when he was there, Coach Sarkisian when he was there, Dirk Cutter when he was ROC, had a little bit different philosophy in terms of that. He really liked to run his offense and, put it on Matt Ryan, the quarterback, to kind of find which weaknesses. But again, all the ins and outs of, hey, moving stuff around, and again, kind of finding what a team is going to do to match up some of those, try to avoid being in some of those matchups they dislike. And again, there's always the offset of, hey, we get the matchup we want with Julio, but also would they have an assignment bust and now we got somebody else running free, and that's where offense can really become fun and frustrating for defenses.
Right. What kind of man hours are we talking about here, man? This sounds like an incredible amount of work. What would your work week look like from a time perspective?
Yeah. So again, for the most part, we had about 2 weeks to do in advance. Me and again, on our normal schedule, you had 2 weeks. You were advancing the game the Sunday before you were going to physically the game Sunday before you presented on Monday. So you had about 2 weeks to write 53 players plus do all the breakdowns of every tendency of, getting a background on a coaching staff. Again, my schedule, Mondays almost across the board. You were going to be in there from 6, 7 a.m. till 9, 10 at night. Again, that was pretty normal. Tuesday, you ratchet it back about an hour because, again, you're going to do a lot of cleanup work. There's going to be a lot of injury stuff, workout stuff that's going to be going along with that. Your Tuesdays end up being disrupted. Wednesday, you're starting to pull it back. You're probably in there till 7 or 8 at night. Thursday, Friday, again, depending on what your week looks like. If you were the advanced scout, if you were getting ready to go on the road, again, what does your next 3 advances look like? How well do you know those opponents? Maybe you start doing some work on those, but you're working, again, easily probably 60, 70 hours a week in season pretty easily. And again, by the time you get to the weekend, again, all of that's dictated on, again, your travel schedule and where are you home? Are you away? Where's your team at? What situation are you in? So those really Monday to Wednesday are big, long 15, 16 hour days. They're the grind of the season without question.
It must be incredibly satisfying though, when you put in all that work, you've done all your research, you've got a big hand, not necessarily in what people see, but obviously in what goes into a game plan. And then you see it come to fruition and you're successful with it. Must be incredibly satisfying.
Yeah, again, that's always one of the best things is, again, I remember in a couple of situations where getting a text shortly after a game from a position coach, a coordinator, somebody that came in, that was spot on. Like, that is what is really satisfying. And hopefully the outcome is all you need. Again, I know for me, that's all I cared about was, hey, did the work I did the last couple of weeks help us win this game? I mean, that's all I cared about. And again, you like to, you stick some feathers in your cap over the years on stuff that was really unique that you found, maybe something that you mentioned, something you had in your report that shows up. Again, I can remember situations both I said it showed up and we were on the right end of it, or unfortunately it was not maybe received in the way it needed to be, and on the wrong side of it. And but again, it incredibly satisfying again for being somebody that doesn't probably ever get their name put up in lights in any way. That's, again, if you win a game that you advanced, you feel good about that.
It's really interesting. I'm glad we had this conversation. I feel as though there's just so much about this game that doesn't get seen, and it's really nice to be able to shine a light on it. So I appreciate you coming on.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's the unsung heroes of football, without question.
100%. So again, Rodrik's podcast is called Scouting the League. You can catch it on the FFSN network and on all our major platforms. So if you get an opportunity, tune into that. Thanks again, Rodrik. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime.
All right. So for the Call Sheet Daily, I'm Coach Kevin Smith. That's our Thursday show. We'll wrap up our week tomorrow on Friday. My man Pez will be back on the show, and we're going to talk about why is the NFL a little bit easier for gamblers, right, to be able to bet on than some other sports. And we're actually going to take a look at the March Madness Final Four and get Pez's thoughts on that. So that'll be our Friday show. Until then, take care, everybody.